We were sitting in the principal's office in Des Moines. Fluorescent light hummed overhead. The plastic chairs groaned under the weight of everything left unsaid. Across from us, the principal adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and looked at me. "Mr. Thorne," he said, "we're trying to determine who will take responsibility for the vandalism report and for the disciplinary follow-up. Is it you?" It was a simple question. A formality, really. I opened my mouth to speak. Not because I wanted to, but because I had trained myself over the years to fill silence before it made anyone else uncomfortable. Before my silence was mistaken for absence. But Lisa, my wife, cut me off before I could answer. Her voice was clean and cold, like it had been sitting in her throat all morning just waiting to come out. "He has nothing to do with this." Zach leaned back in his chair like it was a joke. Smirked. The same smirk he gave me every time he walked past a chore undone. Every time he borrowed the car without asking. Every time I asked a question and got a shrug in return. He didn't even pretend to look guilty. That smirk, it said everything. I didn't say a word. Not because I agreed. Because I understood what the room was. This wasn't a family meeting. This was theater. And I wasn't cast in the lead. I wasn't even in the script. The principal nodded and scribbled something down. Lisa reached over and touched Zach's wrist like he was the one being wronged. Like the problem wasn't the Dr*GS found in his locker. Or the graphic messages spray-painted across the gym doors. Or the fact that this was his third visit to the office in 2 months. I sat there like furniture. The next 2 minutes were a blur, dates, consequences, options for continuation. None of them possible without a parent or guardian signing on as responsible party. Lisa made vague promises. Said she'd talk to his father. I didn't ask which one she meant. I already knew. 2 days later, the school called again. I was in the garage when the phone rang, tightening bolts on the water heater that had started leaking last week. Another thing I was fixing that no one would thank me for. I ignored the first ring, answered on the second. The voice was polite, too polite. That careful tone people use when they're delivering a message they know will sting. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne, but unless a legal guardian steps in by Monday, continuation for Zach will be denied. We've exhausted every option." That was it. That was the moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just the final drop in a bucket already spilling over. I stood there for a long time after the call ended, staring at the cracked floor beneath the water heater. Listening to the slow drip I hadn't finished fixing. Counting the years. The jobs I took. The debt I absorbed. The weekends I gave up. The Christmases I funded. The birthdays I planned. The nights I sat outside Zach's door after his first arrest, thinking maybe if I just waited long enough, the door would open. I didn't tell Lisa what the school said. I didn't need to, because I had already made up my mind. That night, she came home and talked about dinner plans. Said she wanted to do a nice family thing for once. Picked a spot downtown. One of those places where the lighting is so dim you can't read the menu, but the prices are bright enough to burn your eyes. The kind of place you go to feel like you're in a family that functions. One where birthdays are celebrated in public. One where stepfathers keep quiet and pick up the check. I drove. Parked. I smiled when the hostess asked how many. I let Lisa lead the way to the table while her boys dragged behind her like shadows. Zach and his brother Brian didn't acknowledge me. Not even a nod. They slumped into their chairs, pulled out their phones, and disappeared. The waiter came. Water first. Wine for Lisa. Coke for the boys. I passed on a drink. Conversation was thin. Lisa did most of the talking. She kept trying to start something. A memory, a joke, anything to keep the illusion of warmth alive. The boys responded with grunts, with shrugs, with silence. I sat there, staring into my glass, listening to silverware scrape across plates that hadn't even been served yet. Halfway through, Lisa looked at me, smiled. That smile, the one she used when she wanted something expensive and didn't want to say it out loud. "Babe," she said, "hand me your card. The boys need outfits for graduation." She said it like it was understood, like the plan had already been made. Like my agreement wasn't part of the equation. I looked at her. Then I looked at Zach. Then at Brian, who hadn't said a single word since we sat down. I took a slow breath. I could smell the Cabernet in her glass before I even answered. "No," I said. She blinked. Like the word didn't register. "Excuse me?" Her tone was sharp now, but still low enough not to draw attention. I said no. She laughed once. It wasn't real laughter. It was the sound people make when they think they've misheard something absurd. "Don't start this here." I didn't. She did. "I'm not paying for clothes for boys who think I don't belong in their lives," I said. Calm. Even. Brian chuckled. Zach looked up, not surprised. Just amused. "You're just the ATM here," he said. Loud enough that the table next to us turned. Lisa didn't flinch. Didn't correct him. She picked up her wine glass, still 3/4 full, and threw it in my face. It hit hard. The chill of it first. Then the sting in my eyes. My shirt was soaked. Red soaked into the collar. Down the front of my chest. The glass clinked against the table, still half full. She didn't throw the whole thing. Just enough to humiliate. Just enough to make sure the message landed. Zach laughed. Brian laughed. Lisa didn't. She just watched me, daring me to say something, daring me to cause a scene. I didn't. I took the cloth napkin from my lap, wiped my face, set it neatly on the table. Then I stood up, buttoned my jacket, reached into my pocket, pulled out a folded receipt, the one from the last week's groceries. The ones I had paid for while Zach called me a ghost under his breath. I set it on the table, and I left. I didn't say goodbye, didn't raise my voice, didn't turn to see if they watched me go. I walked through the restaurant like a man who had already disappeared. Outside, the night air was clean, cold. I stood on the sidewalk for a long time, staring at my own reflection in the dark glass of a storefront across the street. Red wine on my shirt, in my beard, down my collar. I looked like a man who had been sh*T and survived it. And in a way I had. That night I didn't go home. I drove for hours, no direction, just lines and lights and the sound of the road filling the space where my life used to live. Somewhere between West Des Moines and the state line, I pulled into a truck stop, parked beneath a flickering lamppost, and stared at my hands. They were still shaking. Not from the wine. Not from embarrassment. From clarity. Because for the first time in years, I saw things as they were. Not as I wanted them to be. Not as Lisa promised they could be. What Zach said at that table, what Lisa allowed, it wasn't new. It was just finally spoken out loud. The wine in my face, the laughter, the silence that followed, that wasn't a breakdown. That was the natural end of a structure that had been cracked from the beginning. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I did. I opened my phone. No texts from Lisa. Not even a missed call. I didn't wait. Instead, I opened the banking app. The joint accounts blinked at me, 3 of them, linked to Lisa's cards, her Amazon logins, her DoorDash orders, her Spotify family plan, her monthly gifts to the boys. I selected all 3 and froze access. Changed the passwords. Set withdrawal limits to 0. Next, I hit the subscriptions, Hulu, Netflix, Prime, all running through my name. I canceled each one. Then I opened the mobile plan. My name on every line. Zach's, Brian's, Lisa's. I dropped them from the account. I moved like a surgeon, clean, clinical, precise. Not out of spite, but because I realized I had been financing my own erasure. Every benefit they enjoyed was built on my back, and every one of them resented me for it. The final act that night was the house. It was mine. Had been from the beginning. Purchased 3 years before Lisa and I met. When she moved in, I never added her to the deed. Not because I didn't trust her, but because she'd said she didn't want the hassle. That night I opened a form. Filed a notice. Formal eviction. Lisa Thorne. Unauthorized occupants. Zach Thorne. Brian Thorne. Cause. Non-payment. Non-contribution. Breach of domestic arrangement. The next morning, I handed the printed packet to my attorney. She read it in silence. When she looked up, she didn't ask why. She just said, "I'll take care of it." And she did. 3 days later, a deputy knocked on the front door. I didn't go with him. I parked 3 houses down and watched from my truck as it unfolded. The cruiser idled in front of the house. Lisa answered in her robe, confused. Zach came to the door half-dressed, shouting something about rights. Brian hung back, arms crossed. I saw the moment the deputy handed over the envelope. Lisa tried to laugh it off, tried to reason. Zach raised his voice. Brian started recording on his phone. The deputy didn't care, because facts don't change when you scream at them. The house wasn't theirs. It never was. They had no lease, no payment history, no legal standing, just a string of assumptions. Lisa's face changed when she realized it. She went pale, lips tight, hands trembling. I watched it all through a cracked windshield, sipping stale gas station coffee. No guilt, no second thoughts. Only this: they never thought I'd do it. And that's what made it necessary. Back home, or what used to be home, I moved through the space like a stranger. I gave them 72 hours to vacate. I didn't pack their things. I didn't offer help. I printed one line and taped it to the refrigerator. You have until Friday at noon. By Wednesday, the texts started coming. First from Lisa. Can we talk? Then again. I think you're overreacting. This isn't the way. Then finally, please. The boys are scared. I didn't answer. I had nothing left to say. Thursday, Zach tried. He showed up at my office, unannounced. Marched into the lobby like he owned the place. My assistant buzzed me. I told her to let him wait. I made him sit there for 35 minutes. When I finally stepped out, he stood up fast. Like anger alone could build a bridge he had burned to ash. What the hell is this? He hissed. You're kicking us out? I'm reclaiming what's mine, I said. We're family. I looked at him. Really looked. He believed that only now that the money was gone. You told me I was nothing, I said. Now you get to live like I was never there. His mouth opened, closed. The words weren't there anymore. He left. Friday came. Noon passed. The house was still full. So I called the sheriff. They had 2 hours to move. After that, a moving crew would show up and start boxing everything. Lisa's clothes, the boys' electronics, every unpaid memory. And anything left behind would go in storage. At their expense. At 2:17 p.m., they pulled away in Lisa's SUV. Back bumper rattling. Zach riding *TG*N. Brian in the back with his hoodie over his head. Lisa didn't look at me as they passed. She didn't wave. She didn't even slow down. I didn't watch them go. I turned off the porch light and locked the door behind me. By Saturday, the silence in the house was complete. No music. No games. No footsteps. Just the sound of the HVAC cycling, steady and even. The sound of a house returning to stillness. That night, I stood in what used to be Zach's room. The posters were still on the walls, unsigned athletes, rappers he never listened to. The bed was stripped. The desk drawer hung open. I didn't feel victorious. I felt neutral, as if the wound had stopped bleeding, but the scar had already formed beneath the skin. I didn't hate them. That would have taken too much energy. What I felt was colder. Disinterest. The house stayed empty for weeks. I slept better than I had in years. I hired a cleaning crew, changed the locks, painted over the dents in the hallway, replaced the wine-stained carpet Lisa had laughed about for months. I even changed the Wi-Fi password, started over, and still they didn't understand. Lisa called, left voicemails always late at night, her voice smaller than I remembered, almost like a stranger's. Michael, she said, I didn't mean for this to go this far. We were all just hurt. Can't we just talk? I deleted the message. Then Brian slipped a note under the door. Not signed. Not even addressed to me. Just a folded scrap of lined paper, written in blue pen. Sorry if we made you feel unappreciated. That was it. 6 years of raising him, of covering for him, driving him to school, picking him up from the station, signing his detention slips when Lisa refused. And now a single lukewarm sentence, without even the decency of a name. Zach's message came through a week later, a 3-paragraph masterpiece of blame, rage, and revisionism. He said I blew everything up, that I had torn the family apart, that I was the reason they were crashing on a friend's couch. He never once mentioned the wine, or the laughter, or the words he spat at me in front of a crowd of strangers. I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because silence was the only language they had never learned to speak. I didn't leave a forwarding address. After they moved out, I spent one more week in the house, long enough to hear the echoes leave the walls. Then I packed my truck, shut off the water, and drove to Denver. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't leave a note. I didn't even turn off the porch light. Let the last bulb burn out on its own. The apartment was nothing like the house. Smaller, bare. 1 bedroom, open kitchen, street-facing windows that looked down on an alley with dumpsters and delivery trucks. But it was mine. Clean. Undemanding. The kind of place no one else had ever lived in with me. No hand-me-down resentments. No shared closets. No voices leaking under the door. Just silence. And a mattress on the floor. I left behind a printed sheet on the kitchen counter of the old house. I won't be returning. You have 16 days to collect anything left inside. The locks change after that. They found it 3 days later. That's when the calls began. The first was Lisa. I let it ring. Then Brian, his number still saved from when I used to send him gas money. Then a string of unknown numbers, friends, maybe. Or Zach using burner accounts to slip past the silence. I didn't answer any of them. The messages started stacking. First polite, then urgent, then furious, like they were trying on different voices, seeing which one might crack the wall I'd built. Lisa's voicemails came first. I didn't mean to let it go that far, Michael. The boys didn't know what they were saying. Please don't erase all of us over one bad night. But it wasn't one night, and she knew it. It was every night I came home to slam doors. Every family dinner where I was the ghost at the table. Every time she watched them disrespect me and said nothing, or worse, changed the subject, made excuses, pretended it was normal. There was no apology big enough to cover that. Brian's note came next. Folded, creased, slipped through the mail slot of my apartment like a confession smuggled out of prison. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. 7 words. No greeting. No name. Sorry if we made you feel unappreciated. That word, if, did all the work. There was no ownership in it. No understanding. Just the safest sentence he could write without risking the guilt it was supposed to express. A note designed not to wound, not to heal, just to technically exist. Like leaving flowers on a grave you never visited when they were alive. I folded it back up and dropped it into the trash. Zach's message came last. 3 pages. Typed. Formatted like a legal defense. He CC'd Lisa. Maybe Brian too. I didn't read all of it. I got through the first paragraph. You overreacted. We were just trying to be honest. You're the one who left us. As if they had ever included me in that word. I deleted the email. Blocked the address. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence swallow the noise. Because the truth was, it didn't hurt anymore. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them. The illusion I'd built. The lie I'd wrapped around myself like a winter coat worn through at the elbows, pretending it still kept me warm. I missed the version of Lisa that existed in the early years, the woman who said things like thank you and I don't know how you do it. The one who made coffee before I woke up and left notes in my lunchbox. That woman was gone. Replaced by someone who saw every dollar I spent as expected. Who watched her son's chip at my dignity day after day and thought it was just adjustment. There were no more adjustments. Just the facts. Fact. I paid for everything. Fact. I worked 2 jobs for kids who never once said thank you. Fact. I sat in courtrooms and counselors' offices and principals' chairs and watched everyone defer to their real dad. The man who sent a Christmas card once every 3 years and never spelled Brian's name right. But he got the name. I got the bill. Until I didn't. Took 3 more weeks for them to realize I wasn't coming back. Not emotionally. Not financially. Not legally. Then the desperation started. Brian messaged me from a friend's phone. "Hey, things are kind of bad here. Just wondering if you'd be willing to help with a textbook?" Just a textbook. Like that was easier to say than, "You raised me. I was cruel. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Zach left a voicemail. No apology. No change of tone. Just rage buried under panic. "You don't get to walk away. You married our mom. You took responsibility. That doesn't just disappear because your feelings got hurt." I almost laughed when I heard that. My feelings? This wasn't about feelings. This was about value. About being treated like a footnote in a life I had co-written. About being reminded in front of strangers that I was expendable. That I was tolerated, not wanted. Used, not loved. And now that the credit cards were dead and the Wi-Fi password changed and the checks weren't arriving anymore, suddenly I wasn't expendable? No, I didn't laugh. I deleted the message. Lisa showed up in person the following Sunday. I saw her through the peephole. Her posture was tired. Her makeup was faded. She held something in her hands. Maybe a photo. Maybe a peace offering. I didn't open the door. She waited 5 minutes. Knocked once. Then twice. "Michael," she said, voice muffled through the wood. "We made mistakes. But this doesn't have to be forever." It already was. I stood on the other side of the door, forehead against the frame, and whispered, "You let them laugh when I was bleeding." She couldn't hear it. But I did. And that was enough. A week later, she emailed. The subject line was, "Closure." The message was 1 paragraph long. "I know you won't respond, and maybe that's what we deserve. But I want you to know that I see it now. What you gave. What we took. The boys didn't deserve your sacrifice. I didn't either. I hope you find peace. I hope someday we can earn forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I'm sorry." It was the first real apology. But it was still too late. Because it wasn't just about what they did. It was about what they didn't do for years. They didn't see me. They didn't protect me. They didn't speak for me when I was being stripped down in front of them. They let it happen. Again and again. And now that the power was gone, the money, the support, the safety, they wanted a do-over. But that's not how life works. There are no refunds on years wasted. No replays of respect denied. No reset button when the foundation is already dust. I moved again. Left Denver. Found a new place in a town that didn't know my name. Started fresh. Different job. New locks. No connections. No family. No shadows. And for the first time in over a decade, I woke up without checking my phone for someone else's needs. I started buying food I liked. Drinking coffee how I liked. Living like a man who didn't owe anyone an explanation. Lisa still emails once a month. Updates, mostly. Zach got a job. Brian moved in with a cousin. The boys aren't speaking to each other. She says she's in therapy. Good. I hope they learn something. But I won't be the lesson. Not anymore. They called it cruelty. They said I'd gone too far. That I abandoned them. That I should have known they were just kids. That I was the adult, and adults are supposed to absorb the damage. Swallow the disrespect. Carry the weight until the children grow up enough to say thank you. But here's the thing no one wants to admit. Some kids never say thank you. Some wives never speak up. Some families never become yours, no matter how long you feed them. I didn't leave them to be cruel. I left them to be free. Because what I was living in, what I was enduring, wasn't a family. It was a quiet hostage situation. One where the ransom was paid monthly, emotionally, without ever being negotiated. Lisa called it a rough patch. She still texts sometimes. "You should have seen the way Brian looked when your name came up. Zach's working nights. He's changed a lot. I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking if you're okay." I don't answer. Because I don't owe her reassurance now. Not after she sat across from me at that restaurant and said nothing while her son laughed in my face. Not after she let my identity, my presence, be reduced to a debit card on command. There's no coming back from that. Not for me. The strange thing is, people think walking away is the hard part. It isn't. The hard part is staying for years. Being ignored. stepping over your own pride again and again. Waking up every morning wondering if today will be the day someone in the house says thank you, and going to bed every night with that hope unanswered. That's the hard part. Leaving, that was peace. Cold, yes. Quiet, yes. But peace. I stopped paying for their phones, their food, their futures. But I also stopped paying in pieces of myself. I didn't realize how much of me I had amputated to fit into their life until I was alone again. Sitting in that Denver apartment with nothing but quiet and a single chair, I finally heard myself think. And the thought was this: I was never their father. Not by their choice. Not by their words. Not by the space they gave me in their lives. I was the man who filled the gaps. Financially, emotionally, but never the man they let in. So I stopped trying to be. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. People say blood doesn't matter. That what matters is who shows up, who stays, who carries the weight. I showed up. I stayed. I carried every weight they dropped in my hands. And they still chose someone else. Their real father, the one who missed birthdays, who skipped court dates, who sent checks late or not at all. He got the title, the reverence, the blind loyalty. I got the bills. So I handed them back. Let them go knock on his door. Let them ask him for tuition, rent, forgiveness. Let them sit across from him at dinner and realize he has nothing to offer but a last name and a shrug. Maybe then they'll understand what I was. But it won't matter, because by then I'll be gone. Lisa still holds on to hope. She says things like, "You don't stop loving someone just because they make mistakes. But love without respect isn't love. The servitude. And I was a servant in that house for too long. I mowed their lawn while they played video games. I paid for school while they skipped class. I cleaned up after fights they started and lies they told. I was the safety net, and the punching bag, and the wallet, all in one, until I wasn't. And you know what happened after I left? Nothing. The world didn't end. The house didn't burn down. The boys didn't drop out. Lisa didn't collapse. They adjusted. Because I was never central to them. I was convenient. The only person who unraveled was me, until I stopped unraveling. Now I'm quiet. I work, I sleep, I read, I breathe. I keep the blinds half closed and the music low. I don't explain myself to anyone. I don't wait for validation from people who never saw me. This isn't a happy ending. It's not meant to be. It's a clean one. And clean is enough. Sometimes I imagine what I'd say if they showed up. If Zach knocked on my door, broke down, said the words he never said when it mattered. But even in that fantasy, I still don't open the door. Because love that only arrives after the money stops? That's not love. That's panic. And I'm not a refuge anymore. I'm a man who said no finally and completely. They'll call it betrayal. They'll call it abandonment. They'll rewrite the story in their heads until I'm the villain who gave up too soon. But I know the truth. I didn't give up. I gave everything, until there was nothing left to give. And now I ask you, whoever reads this, whoever hears it in the silence between their own sacrifices, was I wrong? Was it cruel to draw a boundary after years of being trampled? Was it betrayal to finally stop feeding people who bit the hand that fed them? Or was it the only act of love I ever showed myself? Because I've heard their stories. Now I want to hear yours. Would you have stayed? Would you have endured it? Or would you have done what I did and walked away not from family, but from a performance that was never yours to begin with? Tell me, what would you have done?